welcome to another episode of The Unlicensed Counselor. My name is Steve Moak. I am the Unlicensed Counselor, and as always, so grateful to be here, especially on this beautiful, sunny Scottsdale, Arizona day. Yes, Molly, that one was for you. I was talking to some friends. They were making fun of my introduction, or my intro into the show, but I don't care. It's a beautiful day, and I'm grateful to be here where I'm at. And I got some fun, interesting, slightly controversial. I don't think it's controversial, but it's kind of a lightning rod topic for those in kind of the behavioral health, mental health, addiction world. Topic's going to be harm reduction, and I'll get into what harm reduction is, what it isn't, my views, my thoughts. Does it work? Does it not work? This is one I don't really shy away from, and one that on the other side of what I do with the nonprofit for the Coalition for Youth Drug Abuse Prevention, and something that we're kind of adamantly against. So I'll get into more of that, but man, it is a beautiful day out here in Scottsdale, Arizona. It is that time of year. Things are starting to cool off. We're starting to head into that beautiful time of year. Just good times, man. Good times to be alive, right? And I always try and remember that. And I don't know, maybe it's just because I walk into the studio thinking about gratitude all the time, but I always like to bring it up. So hopefully it puts that thought of gratitude in your head as well, too. But before we dive into this, and I am chomping at the bit to start talking about harm reduction, want to thank our sponsors as always, ShareTech, our friends at ShareTech. Go to betterdrugtest.com. Look, if you need a drug test, you've heard me talk about it. You know the reasons why you need this test over any of these other cheapy tests that can be fake, that can be inaccurate. They just have these little test strips. Our test is sent to a lab, and you get secure results sent to you. It's the most comprehensive, accurate, and uncheatable drug and alcohol screen available on the market. Go to betterdrugtest.com. Pick one up. Trust me, if you're in the market for a drug test, this is the one you want to be using, right? And then, as always, our friends at EasySheets.club. I was just talking to our friends at EasySheets.club. Look, go try it out. It's $50. We're going to ship you pressed sheets. Change them out, change the color, change the style. Enjoy it. You and your loved one are going to have a great time sleeping on some new sheets that really is going to feel like a resort when you crawl into them. Little update on the Coalition for Youth Drug Abuse Prevention. Really, the nonprofit, what we're calling it, the campaign name is Hard Stop, right? So you can go to the stopstartshere.org. Follow us at Hard Stop Official on Instagram, on Facebook. Our content is blowing up, candidly. And we get a lot of good comments. We get a lot of bad comments. It's funny how many people take issue with somebody wanting to spread the message of youth drug abuse prevention, right? So, okay, even if you don't agree with it for some reason, which is bizarre, you take the time and comment on these posts, and we are getting hundreds and hundreds of comments. So to me, it tells me we've struck a nerve with folks. Follow our content. We're going to have a formal announcement next week. I'm going to have a guest in studio. He is a professional broadcaster. He's a radio talk show host here in the Valley, longtime friend, and also co-founder of the nonprofit. His name is Seth Leaps, and he's going to be in the studio. Going to be my first guest actually in studio, so really excited to have him on. But again, go to Hard Stop Official. Follow what we're doing. It's fun. It's edgy. It's different. It's important. Again, this may be the most important thing I do in my life because we've gone to too many funerals. We're seeing too many young kids get involved with drugs. And there's a 100% solution to never having a drug issue in your life, and that is to never start, right? And so we have a really creative campaign that we're launching across the country. And you're going to be hearing more and more about that, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more next week as well, too. But while we're on the topic of addiction, there's this thing called harm reduction, right? Harm reduction in general is where they want to allow, they meaning there are certain groups, thoughts, beliefs of folks that say, look, we want to allow people to use drugs. We are okay with them to use drugs as long as they do it in this manner, right? Those manners can include syringe access, drug testing strips, Narcan, naloxone, that's the overdose, basic, the overdose medication that if you are overdosing, you can have that on hand to bring you back to life. You can have these supervised consumption services, which is where they're open air markets where you can go and use drugs, right? So, and they have this really flowery language around describing what harm reduction is. And there are actually state-sponsored, in the United States, there are state-sponsored, government-sponsored marketing campaigns that say, use slow, right? So go slow when you're using. You can use, but we just want you to use slow. Use with a friend, right? Use with a friend. So make sure when you're using that you're using with a friend. Make sure that you have Narcan available to you, right? So that if you happen to overdose while you're doing this, that we can bring you back to life, right? These, again, state-sponsored messages for this. And you'll see this at a lot of cities. Not to bring politics into this, but they tend to be on the more liberal side of the spectrum, right? So if you want to go look at a shining example of great harm reduction in action, go to San Francisco. See how well that's working out. Go to Portland. Go to Seattle. Go to some of these places where there is a huge, huge addiction crisis that's fueling many of these things. I'm not going to say the homelessness is explicitly due to this, but it is co-occurring of addiction and severe mental health issues, and they go hand in hand, right? And one is not helping the other in any way, shape, or form. But this philosophy of harm reduction, their goal, right, is to really allow people to continue to using drugs and just do it in a safer approach to do this. Now, people will listen to this and they'll think that, my belief and how I choose to approach this is old and outdated and things, where I believe in an abstinence first type of program, right? Which is where I don't believe anyone, if they have a drug or alcohol issue, should continue using the substances that are making them sick, right? So I just want to dispel a couple things around harm reduction. First off, this idea that use slow or use with a friend, it's just garbage. It's green lighting the ability for individuals to continue their drug use. So if someone was going out drinking, right, and they wanted to drive home, would you tell them to, maybe eat a cheeseburger first and slow it down, or make sure that you have a friend with them? Absolutely not. You would tell them not to do that whatsoever. So this idea that we're reducing harm by allowing and giving permission to folks to continue to use drugs, in my opinion, harm reduction is the exact opposite of what it's actually doing. It is actually inducing harm by allowing people to continue to be active in their addiction, right? And you'll see all kinds of comments that people, no one's ever overdosed in one of these safe shoot-up sites and things like that. There are all kinds of examples. If you go to Twitter, you're going to find certain people, if you look at harm reduction, where they go to these camps where they are giving out not only these needles, they are giving out the pipes so that they can be smoking the fentanyl and things like that. They are enabling people. These are government and tax dollars now being used to purchase equipment for people to continue to be active in their addiction, right? And here is something that I strongly believe when it comes to harm reduction. I am for things that work, right? People hear me and go, oh, that's old dating. Look at the science, blah, blah, blah. No. Look at what's happening right now. No one is getting better. We are on, I've lost track, which is sad and scary, of how many years we are at record poisoning deaths. People say overdoses, I say poisoning. I've lost track of how many years, year after year, it is a record and continues to go up. If harm reduction has been around, it is a championed idea and cause that many people believe, and it's the opposite of reducing harm. If it was working, if there were studies and research, and I was going around to these places and interviewing people, and they say, I am clean and sober today because I was actively engaged in a harm reduction program, and it helped save my life. If there were dozens and hundreds of thousands of these stories, because we are spending tens and hundreds of millions of dollars across this country on these harm reduction efforts, then I would be going, okay, all right, there's something to harm reduction. But the truth of the matter is that overdoses and poisonings continue to rise. People continue to get sick. The problem is getting worse. It's not getting better, and we're doing nothing. And in fact, we're aiding their addiction, and we're literally letting people die out on the streets. And how we can just turn a blind eye to this, I'm almost at a loss for words, and how we continue to let this happen. So this idea that it's reducing harm is just complete garbage. And if you or a loved one has someone who wants to try this harm reduction approach, by all means go for it. But if you're going to work with me or a loved one that I care about, we're going to focus on abstinence. We want to, and maybe that's gradual, right? Maybe we take you through that through a detox program and we taper you off of those things. That's different than giving you the supplies that allow you to continue to get high, right? Now, one thing that I think confuses the argument within the harm reduction world is what's called medically assisted treatment. You'll hear it referred to as MAT, right? MAT. In my opinion, I separate medically assisted treatment, which is where you've heard some of the drugs that people can basically get on to stay off opioids. That gets lumped into the harm reduction bucket. I look at that as a completely separate bucket, and I am pro medically assisted treatment, right? It's not my favorite. I don't love methadone and some of those things that go on with that, but that is giving medicine to a person to help with their addiction, right? And that I am for, and that I split out. I don't even want to say I'm for, but that has a place in this world that can help and benefit people. It's not my favorite, and in my perfect world, I'd love to see people use medically assisted treatment as a means to get to abstinence, and if they were to taper off that in some way, shape, or form. That's my personal opinion. That may not always be the case, and maybe they have to be on some level of maintenance drug for the rest of their lives, just like a statin, right? So I have no issue with that, but please don't come at me and tell me that medically assisted treatment falls in the same harm reduction bucket as well. I really think that the harm reduction, what it's doing over on that side of things, and the idea that we're reducing stigma because we're letting people continue to use and they don't have to address their addiction, and that it can help with public safety. It's all nonsense, and it's being proven out in real time. Go walk the streets in one of these cities that I've mentioned and see for yourself exactly what's happening. I mean, we are devolving because we're allowing people to stay active in their addiction. So, for those that hear this and go, well, Steve, that's a really old and dated way of thinking. No, I think medication does, can, and should have a place in the treatment continuum. I don't think that providing people with the supplies that enables them to continue to use has this, right? So, what are some, pros and cons kind of with the harm reduction outside of this? And I've pulled up a lot of the different research, and at best, there's mixed outcomes on the effectiveness of these harm reductions. At best, there's no clear outcomes that show that this type of approach is working in any way, shape, or form. And what I really take issue with is I also can see with my eyes what is going on the streets with people who are taking and using this harm reduction approach. And it's killing people. It is killing people. So I personally don't need to look at all of these studies. I can walk the streets of Philadelphia, which I did not that long ago. And I think it's Kensington Street or whatever it is. And these are folks that look like literal zombies. And I'm not kidding you. Watch The Walking Dead, walk down the streets of Philadelphia. It is the same exact thing. They have no spirit. They have no soul. They're just lifeless bodies, almost hung in suspension in the air. And you feel so bad for them. And they're just allowed to sit there and rot in the street. Is that the type of health that we as a country should be doing, right? Is allowing people to continue to decay in front of you? I don't believe that's an appropriate method of treatment, and I think that we can do better and should do better as a country as well, too. And that is happening all over the place as well, too. So, if you don't believe the science, go walk the streets, go talk to some of these folks, which is I have, and it is sad and it is super scary, right? Well, Steve, you're against folks having Narcan, so in case they overdose. I have mixed feelings on this matter, but here's what I do believe is that when you give someone the tool that knows that they can bring themselves back to life, that they need to be injected or inhaled this because they've overdosed, they have little to no fear of now continuing to escalate their use. And in fact, some of the folks that I've spoken with when I've worked in the treatment center think of it almost as a badge of courage, right? Well, and they're drawn to whatever batch of pill or fentanyl or whatever it is laced with because they want to receive that extra high knowing that they can be brought back to life because they have Narcan or naloxone available to them to basically resuscitate you. Now, here's the flip side of this as well, too. There are new drugs, as there always are, evolving into kind of the drug marketplace that's all over the country, and one of which is called xylazine. Xylazine is just as potent, and it kind of creates this almost like an alligator texture to your skin and things like it. It is just disgusting, nasty stuff. It is not affected and cannot be reversed by Narcan and naloxone and things like that. So now, as they continue to chase a cheaper high and these new substances are being mixed and cut into things, even the idea that you can be brought back to life is not necessarily going to hold true, right? So are you willing to gamble? And the answer is, yeah, a lot of these people are willing to gamble. So I am not for just having these available. If you would like to have them at your home or a place of business in case of emergency, I understand that, because people can and do overdose, and it would be nice to be able to save those people. I'm not looking for people to just die, but I'm also not looking to allow people to just feel like they have an eternal safety net to continue their drug use, right? I say these things, and I'll say this on Facebook and Instagram, and I'll have conversations, and I'll put out posts and just get attacked. I mean, I get attacked regularly for these positions. And for some reason, it's the folks on this far extreme that always scream and yell the loudest, when really all that I feel like I'm talking about is really kind of common sense approaches in trying to help people recover from drug addiction. And I'm not sure why that has made me into such a controversial person to be talking about this, right? One of the things that I think comes along with this is if you're allowing people to continue to use, right? How are we actually getting to some of the crux of what their issues are, right? They're just going to kind of sit there and be able to continue to spiral. I need to move people towards detox, maybe some short-term sobriety, so that I can get them thinking, moving in a way that can hopefully lead them down a path of kind of recovery in my world, again, being abstinence. But if I'm not able to even intervene with these folks, and it is oftentimes illegal in certain states to, if you're camped out and homeless and actively using drugs, unless you threaten to harm yourself or others, to actually take action and basically move someone into a treatment type of program. I'm blown away that this exists in a society that can build and send rockets to space and can do all these amazing technological things, that we just sit back and allow people to actively use drugs and kill themselves. And they're dying on the streets, right? I mean, there's 300 people that will die today and tomorrow and the next day from poisonings. Again, I call them poisonings, not overdoses, because most of the time people are taking something and they don't realize it's cut with something else, and then they never come back, right? So the idea that we can just let this go, we can solve these incredibly complex problems, and we have these incredible systems and technology available in our world, and we have the budgets to do so, and we just let people rot right in front of our eyes. It continues to just baffle me that we as a society are completely okay with this, because we don't want to infringe on that person's right to be able to use drugs freely without stigma. At some point, there has to be adults that come into this conversation, right? And you have to say things that may hurt people's feelings. If my 3-year-old daughter wants to eat candy every single day for dinner, I can't let her do that. Her teeth will rot and fall out, right? There has to be adults that come in and say, we cannot accept this. We have to be able to ignore the screaming voices that say, you're infringing on this person's right to use drugs and da-da-da-da-da. And we have to say, yes, I hear you. I understand that. These are the rules. These are the laws. This person is sick and we want to get them help, right? And I'm sick of just seeing people rot on the street and leaving them left to die. And that's really what's happening. And I think that we can do better. We should do better. I understand the idea behind harm reduction and where it started. And I don't even think that it was bad where kind of the idea was to where it started. But as with everything on kind of this progressive side of things, it has the word progress in it. What does that mean? It means it keeps going. So if you would have said, Steve, this person was taking 30 OxyContin or Vicodin or whatever, and we want to move them down to 10, down to 5, down to 3, and with the goal of getting them off of those substances, I would go, okay, right? Like, you've got a plan here. You got a plan to kind of taper somebody off them. You're allowing them to, use a little bit of that substance while you move them along towards abstinence. To me, that is an acceptable form of harm reduction, right? I don't love it, but I could get on board with that going, that makes a little bit of sense, right? Like, that makes a little bit of sense. They're using 30, now they're using 10, now they're using 5, now they're using 1, with the idea of getting them to 0. Somewhere along the line, we said, it's okay as long as they're not smoking it, as long as they're not shooting it. Now we're actually going to give them that needle. Now we're going to give them the pipe. Now we're going to give them that tourniquet. Now we're going to, and I'm just going, where does it stop, right? There's that progressiveness that has gotten into this, that has now, taken a complete wild turn. And now we're stuck as a society going, what happened? Well, how did we get here? I'm looking around, scratching my head going, that person needs help. That person needs help. That person's sick. We need to get them help, and we can't do that, right? So however we've gotten to that point, I think we need to stop. We need to take a good hard look around. There needs to be adults that come and say, these are the rules, these are the laws, we need to enforce these. And we're doing it from a compassionate point of view as well, too, right? We're doing it from a compassionate point of view, not just because it's the rules and the laws, but because I see sick people and I want to help them get better, not allow them to continue to use drugs. Oh, it is, fires me up, Robin. This topic of harm reduction. And again, I'll take a lot of heat for commentary like this, but I just don't care. I just don't care. Common sense has to be brought back into the treatment world and into the addiction community, and we've lost it. Right. And these are PhDs, MDs, scientists, that quote all these studies and things like that. Smart people that are getting duped or want to believe a narrative that just isn't true. I have such a hard time with hearing things and people saying things and seeing things with my own eyes. I believe what I see with my own eyes. You can tell and hear all the stuff from the internet, but when I walk the streets and see what's actually happening, and go on Twitter and find some of the harm reduction folks that are interviewing people on the street, don't just take my word for it. I've watched all these videos. I know for a fact exactly what's going on and what's being handed out here. It is scary stuff. I would never, ever, ever advocate for anybody who's trying to beat addiction to go down this path. It's just, again, if it was working, you would have my attention. It's not working. We need to do better. We need to try new initiatives, and we need to get sick people help, right? And get them moving in a better direction. Okay. Whew. Boy, I just feel like that was a lot of fire coming out of my mouth here for a minute there. A couple little nuggets before I close out the show as well, too. We were actually talking just about before the show, the passing of Jimmy Buffett. Always was a fan, drinking, non-drinking, just a fun concert entertainer to be a part of. But then there was another passing this weekend that caught my eye, actually, that I looked into and read a little bit more. The gentleman who was the lead singer of Smash Mouth. And all of a sudden, he's going into hospice, and all of a sudden he was passed. And I didn't know, I know the music. I didn't know anything about him. And I just thought, 56 years old seems interesting to just be young and kind of pass. And I'm like, was it COVID stuff or vaccine? You never know these days. And so I started reading a little bit more about it. And then it was liver failure, right? Well, liver failure in a 56-year-old person kind of sent up a red flag to me. And I'm not here to disparage anyone, but I certainly was like, okay, well, let's read a couple more articles. And you do a little more reading, and he liked the bottle, right? Liked to have a couple drinks and things like that. And rest in peace. And, I hate to see anybody pass, but it certainly sounds like had the earmarks of alcoholism, right? Like, was a problem drinker, alcoholism, all of that type of stuff. And again, I worked at a treatment center. I'm a recovering person myself. I've been around people who are still active in their alcoholism and all. And I just thought, man, why couldn't we have taken this as an opportunity to kind of spread the word, educate a little bit about this is what alcohol can do. You hear me talk about drugs and alcohol. Obviously, I'm very passionate about, how those things help. But the thing that's right under our nose that many of us are going to go home and have a scotch or a bourbon or whatever and kind of not think twice about it. And I'm not saying your nightly scotch or bourbon is going to, that means you're an alcoholic. I'm not doing that math. But this was an opportunity that I felt like was like, oh, if we could have said, or at least maybe referenced problem drinking or alcoholism. I don't know him. I don't know his story, but from what I read, it certainly seemed that was the case. And maybe we could have taken a moment to kind of push a little awareness out to the world that, hey, if you or your loved one, struggling with alcohol, we don't want to see anyone else past 56 years old. It's sad, preventable, right? Preventable stuff. And I just thought I'd mention that as we're kind of closing out the show today, because I just thought, man, we had an opportunity to kind of say this, and kind of say that, hey, alcoholism contributed to a young person's death, right? A younger-ish person's death, and it just didn't need to. So it's never too late to get out there, find treatment. It doesn't have to be an inpatient program, can be outpatient. There could be recovery coaches. There's AA. You could just stop drinking, whatever it is you need to do. Just think about it. If you or a loved one is struggling with it, find a way, talk to somebody who's maybe been there and find out how they stopped and ask a question about how they stopped and why they continue to stay stopped as well, too. So just something I wanted to point out to everybody as I thought it was an interesting kind of weekend. Everybody was talking about Jimmy Buffett, and I was looking over at this guy going, what's going on over there? What's going on over there? Sad stuff. And again, when you work in a treatment center, you see people, they come in, they're so excited and they get high on, getting into recovery and stopping drinking and stuff. And then all of a sudden they walk back out the door and they're right back to it. And before you know it, you get a note back at the treatment center saying this person's passed on, right? It's just preventable. Sad. It's preventable. Just got me thinking, hey, well, I didn't mean to end the show on kind of a Debbie Downer note, but really got me thinking about it while Jimmy got all the headlines, and rightfully so. This was just a young life that probably could have gone a different direction if we were able to maybe help him or found some help with some alcohol as well, too. But anyways, well, look, you heard my thoughts on harm reduction. Do your own research, right? Go on, Google it. There's some great follows on Twitter that you can actually see people that kind of go undercover into these camps, into these programs where they advocate of, hey, we're going to try and move people into treatment when they're there. That's not what's happening. They're giving them supplies to continue to use drugs, right? So do your own research, come to your own conclusions, but I want to make sure that I'm bringing it out to light that harm reduction isn't what it seems and that we should do better as a country. Hey, hope you enjoyed this. If you want to have a deeper conversation around this, go to Instagram. You can follow me at The Unlicensed Counselor, on Facebook, The Unlicensed Counselor. I'm always getting into conversations and mixing it up with folks. I enjoy the dialogue back and forth. I think it just helps kind of continue the conversation, and we can get to it. We may agree, we may disagree. It's all good. Anyways, my name is Steve Moak. I am the Unlicensed Counselor. Until next time, thank you very much.